Hey folks, it's Patriot Nurse. Thank you for joining me today. In this important video, we're going to be discussing what it means to be a woman now that Roe v. Wade is overturned. And this video is a pretty powerful one as far as the subject matter because it's messy and life is messy. So I want to encourage you, stick with me through the whole thing and give me grace. If there's something I say that offends you, please just push pause on the offense response for a moment and hear me out and view it as an effort to bring grace and understanding and empowerment to women, not as something, God forbid, to destroy rights. So first off, friends, it's important if you're subscribed that you click the bell button notification, that you leave me one comment, even if it's just a heart or a thumbs up, down. It doesn't matter. YouTube is suppressing conservative content like mine, so if you want to see it in your feed, you have to engage, bottom line. This video is going to be very important for women, particularly under the age of 40, but also for anyone who has grown up in the post-Roe generation to try and undo some of the programming that's happened. So most of my audience is actually not in the younger category. So if you have a daughter, a granddaughter, a niece, a friend, someone who this video you think would empower them, then please share it with them. The Roe v. Wade decision overturning, first off, does not make abortion illegal. It just kicks this issue back to the purview of the states, which it should be constitutionally anyway. But a lot of the reaction that you're seeing here is one of a complete loss of identity and a scrambling of core values. And we have had precious few core values that have endured, frankly, since Roe v. Wade in this nation. Around that time, with the feminist revolution and around that time with Roe v. Wade coming through, this is when things started to unravel in this nation. And there are at least 2 generations, really 3 generations of women who've grown up in a place where really men were not expected to step up and be husbands. Women were expected to be whores. Every woman. Not just the far-flungs of society. The expectation was that if you are interested in a man and if he's interested in you, you give him your body away for free without commitment because you can always edit undo if you get pregnant later. These expectations have been so detrimental and so damaging to the fabric of our society, so that now we are in a situation where people are Googling for relationship advice of, I slept with him and he won't text me the next morning. The fruit of this is more than just the millions of children that have been aborted. The fruit of Roe v. Wade that has been installed, our base operational programming that has been installed, is that the expectation is that every woman is now a prostitute and every woman should be willing to sleep with a man without any commitment on his part, specifically commitment that is legally binding, that would obligate him into protecting and providing for her and her offspring. Now, the men going their own way, MGTOW, this is a response to, again, the hypersexualization and, frankly, the masculinization of women that has resulted in Roe v. Wade. The issue of abortion that you're seeing here is not just whether or not a woman can obliterate the fruit of her womb and whether or not she has to drive 8 hours to do it. The issue fundamentally, even before we get to this fact, is what is the essence of a woman? And what is the nature of a woman? Is she primarily a unidimensional creature who is just a sex object? If we're holding up signs that say, I will not be an incubator, what we fundamentally did was we reduced the value and definition of a woman down to her sexual components. That's despite the fact that the pro-abortion and pro-Roe v. Wade crowd are holding up these signs. They are the embodiment of everything they say that they stand against. What does it mean to be a woman? Are you defined by whether or not you can slaughter a fetus? The issue is that we have objectified women since this time. And if we want to rebuild a woman's value, it doesn't start with giving abortion access. Rebuilding a woman's perspective and a value is rebuilding her own sense of worth in her own eyes and rebuilding boundaries and setting boundaries, meaning I'm not sleeping with you. Don't try and guilt me to sleep with you and hold out the carrot of a promise of a relationship. That's been the fruit of all this. And it's not the evil men doing this, it's us doing it to ourselves. So looking forward into the future, I see a future where consequences have been reinstated. And consequence is not a bad thing, friends. Consequence brings balance to the universe. That poor choices and choices, every choice is a value communication. If I make the choice as a woman to sleep with a man for whatever reason, then I am communicating my value and my worth in that instance. And not only what I think about myself, but what I think about the role of sex in a relationship, and what I think about the role of relationships in progeny and in family and in a society. We as women have incredible power, and it is far more than just what's between our legs. We have power to communicate values and to select mates and to select men, and by that process, select the future. Women historically, throughout the generations, have been the ones who have been essentially the choice mechanism for what the next generation's characteristics are going to be, and also what the next generation's value structure is going to be. Now, not to sound overly harsh on this, because let's face it here, if you are under 40 in this nation, really under 45, if you are a young person right now in this generation, everything about what your culture has communicated to you regarding relationships between men and women has been an utter and complete total failure and lie since you were born. So now what we have to do is try and pull away all this confusion. That's why you're seeing so much anger when it comes to these women holding up signs saying, I am a woman, not a womb. Define a woman then. They can't even define a woman half the time, particularly because biology is now hate speech. But let's take, for instance, that you do believe a woman is a biological woman. To what degree do we have multiple dimensions as a woman? Am I just a physical being? Am I a spiritual being? Do I have a consciousness that has deep emotions attached to actions performed with this body? Or am I just an animal that goes around in a hormone-induced craze, mating with random creatures, other creatures of my species, maybe, if we're optimal, in order to meet some kind of basal instinct? Is that all I am, a basal instinct? And I submit to you, no, that the role and value of women post Roe v. Wade is going to be hopefully a renaissance for women and not a regression. The renaissance for women now is that we are empowered, and we are empowered to make positive choices in our life that is going to have ripple effects into the future. And that means that I'm not going to sleep with some man and risk pregnancy with some man whose character traits I don't know and can't vouch for, whose family I don't know and can't look back at their life and their legacy going forward into the future and what their interactions are going to be in all of this. We have to go back to what it means to select a mate and what it means to select a future for your offspring. That's what it means now that Roe v. Wade is turned back. Not that we became forced incubators, but that we have to make better decisions as women and more empowered decisions. And it also means that we have to have boundaries with men, boundaries that are enforced. That when I say, no, I'm not having sex with you before we're married because it devalues me as a woman and it turns me into a prostitute, that I don't get pushback for it from men who say, oh, you don't love me. Oh, you just don't know that we're with these times right now. Nonsense. If we want empowered women, then we come at it from a place of self-respect. Not, can I make a trip an hour away to have an abortion when my poor choices didn't work out? Now, in the grand scheme of things, I need to also put a note here that I have known and have dear friends who are women who have had abortions and whose abortions were performed not because they didn't want their babies, but because their babies basically developed in such a way that life was incompatible outside the womb, and it was discernible early on between 15 to 20 something weeks. So I've known people for whom this is the case, but that is not the vast majority of the reason why abortions are performed. I've also had friends who were the victims of severe sexual violence and rape. That's not the reason that most abortions are performed in this nation, okay? We should have sensitivity. And this all comes back down, again, to boundaries and enforcing boundaries. And we can all be better with this. But simple things now that our ancestors took for granted, as far as physical touch between men and women, as far as seclusion between men and women, there's a reason why these protocols developed, and it wasn't because they were backwards, slave-owning, homophobic, repressive people. It was because they knew what worked in a culture that valued family. They knew what worked in a culture that valued individuals and wanted to safeguard particularly women as de facto the weaker of the species. And we are. There's no way that you can match weight for a man. So I would recommend also that we have honest conversations with our daughters here about what it means to set boundaries, what it means to have self-respect, but also what it means to have your head on a swivel and be willing to defend yourself and be capable of defending yourself against men who are either not listening to you, will not take no for an answer, or men who, for whatever reason, God forbid, are violently coming at you with sexual predatory mannerisms. We, unfortunately, particularly in communities of Bible belief, are not having frank conversations with our girls about the predatory nature of some men. And that needs to happen, not to scare women, but to show them, like, this is how you live in this world. This world is a dangerous and messy place, but it can also be a beautiful place. And there's a lot of control that you have over your outcomes with your choices, but sometimes you can make the best choices and the situations that you're in are not ideal. So we need to empower our girls to be able to defend themselves and to be able to establish positive boundaries with men. And let me tell you guys, like, the older that you get, the harder it is to be able to do these things with poise and class. And I think the wisdom, particularly of the scriptures and the wisdom of traditional and conservative cultures, that has an opportunity to thrive now. And it's not, again, it's not a regression. I submit to you that it is a renaissance in women's rights and in women's self-respect. And hopefully looking forward into our society's future with a birth rate of less than 2, like, is it little wonder that people don't want to have families when the world is so chaotic? And I submit to you, the reason we have chaos in relationships where men and women don't want to commit, don't want to build families, don't want to build a future together, it's not just because of economic reasons, it's because of deep-seated issues on what it means to be a human being. Whether it's a human being in the womb or a human being that has 2 X chromosomes or an X and a Y, what it means to be a human being and how it is to function in this world and what it means to leave a legacy and what it means to make choices and having ramifications of choices. We have gotten so used to edit undo that we haven't learned that there are hard consequences for actions, and the best way to shield yourself from negative consequences is to make positive decisions. And we're all learning in this. We're all learning in this. So friends, when it comes to being a woman and the role and value of a woman changing after Roe v. Wade, if anything, I think that it solidifies the value of women, that we are more, we are more than just what's between our legs. And let me encourage you, ladies, if a man cannot love you with his pants zipped up, he will not love you when they're taken off. And it's a good test for a woman to put against a man. It avoids a lot of relationship problems when you put down physical boundaries on sex and all activities associated with it. You can figure out pretty fast and in a hurry, based on what your own boundaries are, whether or not a guy is a decent guy. And think about all of the heartache that could have been avoided and all of the self-help and all of the relationship advice that could have been avoided if a woman not only said and communicated, I am not having sex with you before we're married. And then number 2, filling back and pushing back on that wall of a boundary. And a consequence is what? It's a barb in the fence of boundaries. I'm sorry if you feel rejected. That's not my problem. I've communicated to you that this is my boundary, and if you can't accept that as a man, then you need to work on your own personal restraint and issues. There has to be pushback against this. There has to be the first boundary that we have as women, guys and gals. The first boundary that we have is not on the outside, it's within. The first boundary that we have is, who am I and what will I accept as behavior? Who am I and what is my role in this world? Your first boundary is always with yourself and then with the outside world. But because we've told women, have no boundaries, sleep with whoever, go with your basal instincts, and deny your deeper spiritual needs as a woman for commitment, for solid relationships, for a loving relationship. By the way, you're going to have greater sex, like a much better time in sex if you're in a solid, committed relationship, and that has been proven over and over and over again, that women have more orgasms when they are in a committed relationship. So, like, it's better for you overall. It's better for us overall on the physical standpoint, on the spiritual standpoint, and on the looking forward into the future standpoint. So we're going to have hard conversations, and we're going to have to redefine what it is to have worth and value as a woman and not reduce every woman to a prostitute that gets swiped left or swiped right on some smart chip-driven device. We are human beings created to thrive in this world. We have a spiritual essence that longs for justice, for truth, for righteousness, for love. That's what people want. And what we've told women over these past few decades here is that love is something that gets doled out like party treats and party favors. That is not what love is. We need to demand better, not only from ourselves, but from men in relationships. And Roe v. Wade being reversed does one thing more than anything else. It highlights, aside from its constitutional implications, it highlights the importance of responsibility, because there can be no happy outcomes and reinforced safe spaces without consequences, because a consequence is a barb in the fence of boundaries. We have to have better boundaries as women. We have to have more self-respect as women, and knowing that we have so much more value than just a court decision in the 70s. I hope it was helpful for y'all today. If you enjoyed the video, I hope you'll subscribe to me here on YouTube, Patriot Nurse. You can also support me on Patreon, subscribe, Star Cryptocurrency, and PayPal. I got links below. If you'd like to train with me online, I got a course down below. You have the link there for medical preparedness. You can also train with me in person, where we do cover women's health, birth, and STDs as part of our class in Medical Prep 101, 201, and 301. And you can find that full schedule of where I'm going to be at the website, thepatriotnurse.com, Kalispell, Montana, Knoxville, Tennessee, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Phoenix, Arizona, and Keller, Texas over this next year. Check the full schedule out at the website. Friends, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you, and I hope that we can encourage our women and our men to do better and to have confidence in their own ability to set boundaries and to set a higher expectation for behavior and outcomes. I hope it was helpful for y'all. For now, it's Patriot Nurse signing off, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.